Welcome to the Fashion is Cool podcast, where we explore fashion's business side and the entrepreneurs behind it. Hosted by Dwight Carter, your guide to diverse careers and inspiring stories in fashion.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Dwight Carter from Brainchild Next, and your host for the Fashion is Cool podcast. Today we have Paul Gibson, the owner and founder of the brand Paulie Gibson, who quotes, "I'm most passionate about people. That is truly what fuels desire to create beautiful clothes. I believe there's to be a transformative quality in fashion where you can literally feel differently about who you are just by getting dressed." Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Do you remember how we met?
I do.
Okay.
So I graduated college in 2004, and instead of going right back to New York right away, I started the retail path. There wasn't a whole lot in the city galvanized already by way of design or, fashion entrepreneurship. So I started managing Express. There was a guy with a local t-shirt line that I became really good friends with named Jacob Laws. And Jacob was like, "You have to meet this guy, Dwight." And I was like, "Okay." And somehow you emailed me and you were like, "Okay, so you're a designer. I'm doing this fashion show called Threads for Hope." And you put me on an email chain with Michael Drummond. And that's how the first time I met you was at the show, at the pageant.
Oh,
As far as I remember.
Yeah.
And that's when I met Michael Hope and his family. I met Michael Drummond. And I think, was that the show Carly Kloss was in when she was little? I think it was.
So it was Jeff and Mary's show. And before they did tribute, they were doing just, shows. And that's how they discovered, Carly Kloss at that show.
Yeah.
And then I volunteered to work the show and came up with an idea to incorporate some local designer people that I didn't know existed, by the way. I didn't know we had local designers at the time. And and then we came up with this competition idea, and that's where it was. Yeah, that's exactly where I met you, was right at the pageant.
Yeah. And coincidentally, at the same time, I was represented by Talent Plus at that time. And then I left Express to be the new faces person in recruitment for Central Models. And so I quit Express and started working for Sharon Tucci and full time. And so that was like a year before they all gathered together to start Fashion Week in St. Louis. So that was a really fun time.
Yeah, no, that definitely. I interviewed Jill Manoff the other day, and we talked about how I met her, and it was right after I met you, like just a year later.
Crazy.
Right.
God, such a long time ago.
Yeah, because do you remember because right before Fashion Week, Alive was doing just individual, like one-off fashion shows, and they did one at the Chase. It was like on the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. God. Yeah.
Yeah, because you probably booked some models for that. I'm assuming you were doing that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then I remember there was this like big secretive meeting that happened where like Attilio and Jill met with Sharon and Jeff and Mary and Gail. And like it was all downtown. And then Sharon reported back like, they're thinking of doing a regional fashion week. And I was like, oh God, like I was so excited. It just just the opportunity of like, I had shown in your show. That was my first show outside of showing for school. And so that I just remember being so excited that there could be something happening in my city and I didn't have to leave my city. Like I didn't have to move to New York to like try to make this, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Make this thing happen. And so, thanks to your part of that, sort of like that ecosystem that was developing, like I got to show my work at that very first Fashion Week, like at the Contemporary Art Museum. And I was stoked, and we had so many people in that building. And it was like, I remember being like you couldn't tell me anything. Like, I was so thrilled to just be able to do the thing that I love to do. It was awesome.
Yeah, we did pack that place.
Yes.
It was insane. And this was my first time really doing my own like show by myself. And
Yeah.
so I didn't know I needed more people than I had.
Yeah.
Because back of house was chaotic. I mean, it's always chaotic, but it was really chaotic because I think I had two people back there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, we had like, and it was essentially an installation that 1st
Mhm.
year, and you had these risers built, and so they walked out and they went to their specific designer's riser,
Mhm.
and I think we had 6 each, I think, and like it was just really cool. And
Yeah.
then like, I mean, it was hard to even see where they were supposed to go because so many people were there, and then like,
Yeah.
you had this map. You were like, okay, Paulie's little platform is like over here, and they were all like, how do I get to it? Because there were so many people. It was so fun.
Yeah, we didn't plan for that.
No, who knew? Yeah, we didn't know anything.
Not at all. Man, yeah, that was I still watch the videos on YouTube from back then because remember Jill Manoff's sister was the host for this cable show.
Yes.
You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so weird. Yeah, I totally remember that.
Yeah, it was like 2008, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah, that's fun. I don't even know if any of those other designers are still doing anything.
I don't know. For some reason I remember Amy from Chaos, which is now
Yes.
Clarity,
Yeah.
who I love. And then there was Angelica, who did like cashmere. Do you remember?
Man, you remember more than I
Angelica
do.
Accoutrement or something like that. She was doing like cashmere sweaters and stuff. So like, there's so many like people who were around that it was really fun getting to see. It was fun getting to see everything and getting to know everybody and doing these events together because like, I mean, that's where I met Laura Kathleen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I didn't, she was fresh out of school then too, like at that time. So it was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you did kind of a mix of men's and women's at that first show.
Yeah.
Both shows, I think. You did a mix of
I
men's.
think the first 2 years. Yeah. Cause like then I can't quite remember how it all shifted, but I was doing men's and women's that first show. No real brand, I would say like really like no brand story. I was just trying to participate, you know what I mean? Doing whatever. And, just trying to get out there, basically, let people know what I'm doing. And plus working at a modeling agency made sense because I had access to figures to, fit on and, all of that stuff. And I mean, these were models that were working all around the world, like Allie Turner and Madison Bradley. And we had this guy, Nathan, who was just in Giselle Bundchen's coffee table book, like, some really, like, really great models to work with. So I was just doing a little bit of everything. So those first couple of years were, I'm going to call them unfocused, but fun. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did you transition into just doing men's at that time?
So I think when we moved Fashion Week because it was scattered around the downtown area at first, once Alive decided to like centralize it at Lumiere Place, and with the dark room and the white floor and all that stuff, that was a year that Madison closed my show. This girl Kristen opened my show, and Deborah Bass was in the front row, and she said to me like, okay, can we just kill the dresses? Like, you're clearly a menswear designer. Like, it's interesting. It's different. Like, let's just focus there. And that was when I was like, oh, okay, I should probably have that. You could clearly see that that's where I was having more fun. So I decided then, I was like, okay, we're going to do this way. And I still don't think I really formulated a business or a company. I know I didn't register anything until 2012. So And I think at that time, Fashion Week had started to wrap up by that time, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, 2012 was when I formulated my official company. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Fashion Week ended around, I can't remember exactly, but maybe 2013 ish,
Sure. Yeah.
around there, somewhere like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you started doing menswear. And then when did you, so you said 2012 was when you kind of had your launch of
Yeah.
of a brand. And so how did
Yeah.
that, what was that process?
Yeah, so a woman reached out to me named Sarah Farragalla, and she was with Raw Artists, and at the time that was a brand new, thing to the city. Um, and so I was at the very first event. There was, a musician, all sorts of different art under one umbrella in one room, for one night. And so I was the fashion design element of that, and I was like, okay, how do I get my name out here outside of my city? Like, because maybe I was thinking that I needed to have some customers. You know what I mean? I needed to find my guy, and so I looked into other regional fashion weeks because I started to see that like our fashion week was changing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I looked into Nashville and, all these other ones. And then I found this boot camp for designers in Phoenix. And a guy named Brian Hill reached out to me, and we did like a little phone interview thing. And he's like, yeah, we have this program. The show is in October, but this boot camp helps you get prepared for your company. So, or for your business, I guess. And so every week we had a call with a homework assignment. And then it was like, next week you need to turn in your EIN number. You need to register your business, whatever. Then we need your mission statement. Next week we need your, um, your product assortment. Like it was like these little steps throughout that lasted for 16 weeks, I think, or 12 weeks, something like that. And then, it was all supposed to get us to, prepared enough to be, to show at their Phoenix Fashion Week show in October. And a part of that was, you develop this line, you price it all out, and then you pitch it to these executives, these buyers at Zappos.com. And they would ultimately either pick your brand to be sold, or they don't have to pick anybody, or they can pick multiple. So in my mind, I was always like, I don't care about anything else other than that. That was where I was focused on. I wanted to see if I could be for sale in a store. You know what I mean? Like it's always been a dream of mine, and so, yeah, that's kind of how I moved forward. So I ended up doing the show. I pitched my stuff, and they picked me and two other brands to carry. And that's sort of how I started garnering some attention is in that way. So yeah, that was a time that you could not have prepared me for, because that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it what collection was that?
It was called Tribe. And it was
Tribe. I remember.
Tribe was about like, it was really me saying like this is who I am. I love color, I love prints, I love texture. And so I took this sort of like, I threw just loud prints all together and mixed them all up. And it was really fun, and gave it sort of this like ethnic flair, which I loved. And then the people who I ran into, some stylists in Phoenix, who also worked really well with Style Fashion Week in Los Angeles, and they asked if they could take my collection from Phoenix. They were like, can we take your collection and house it in our showroom? We're going to try to get it on some celebrities. And I was like, okay. Like I didn't really know what that meant. And then they messaged me and they're like, oh, we want to introduce you to this woman, Veronica. She runs Style Fashion Week. So then literally 3 weeks later, I fly out to California and do a casting for Style Fashion Week. And then I do Style Fashion Week in LA. And then I start getting reports from them that like all this stuff is happening. Like, oh, we sent your stuff out to Wiz Khalifa. We sent your stuff out to Darren Chris. And I was like, what? And meanwhile, I'm in St. Louis bartending. So like, yeah, it was like really weird. And then that's when uh, Veronica Style Fashion Week reached out to me that following February and asked me to come back because America's Next Top Model was filming and they had men for the first time on their show. So that's how I got to be featured. So it was like a dream come true, really, was, finally getting that opportunity to show the world what you do.
And so they had men for the first time, and then
Yeah.
what was the role that if they won a challenge, is that what it was?
Yeah, so it was Style Fashion Week was doing their spring show. And so there were 3 brands that were willing to, use to be on the show slated for that night. Civil Society, which is all men's. And then there was another brand that was all women's. And then they asked me to put women in my show, which I usually do anyway. So they could be booked. It was a go-see. And so the go-see was to do the show that same night. So the morning of my show, I casted all of them. I picked who I picked, and then they went on to their other respective go-sees. So they could book a maximum of 2. And so, yeah, it was really fun. I still am in contact with those kids that were in my show. Like, they were so great. I'm following their little careers, blossom and stuff after the show. And that was 10 years ago. So it's really cool to see all of that. Yeah.
So then from there, how did that, you were still bartending, right? And then from there, what happened after all this exposure? What did you do?
I mean, it's funny because like it was a lot of visual attention. It was a lot of like, how do you say that? Like from then it was like, there were all of these like magazines that had based out of California that had I was in Marie Claire, like I was featured on like all these other little things that were very PR driven, which I was super stoked for. But unfortunately, it didn't translate into sales.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard. What people don't understand, it's like to produce a collection is extraordinarily expensive because the only discounts you get on fabric and on production is when your quantity is high. So you have to spend all this money up front to design and pattern make and create your own sample, which is what the model is wearing, in hopes of trying to sell that to retailers, right? And I just found myself like almost like, not even almost, I found myself like unable to keep up with producing more new things when it wasn't selling, and then I tried other avenues, like maybe I just need my own online store, but then that's sort of also like, but how much inventory are you keeping? And how am it was still very much side hustle because bartending was how I was able to, live, but it was also what was, funding my, fashion endeavor also, but luckily I did end up working out like during the day. I was working on my business, but I was also working for Greg Garland in a factory called Moxie. And that's where my clothes were made. So that was really helpful because I was, learning a lot about the manufacturing process and like, even supply, because it feels like this industry is so funny because I feel like a lot of times people inadvertently gatekeep their resources because once they found something that works for them, they don't want that to be interrupted or for them to become less primary to that source. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like a lot of times I talk to other designers like, where's your stuff made? And people were like, like nobody wants to tell you that information. Meanwhile, I'm over here trying to corral come to Moxie. Like they're great over here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
So I learned a lot during that period. And I think it was that time that I realized the severity of like, oh, I need more money if I'm going to
Mhm.
really do this the way that it should be done. So yeah, that's the reality of, being a very small fashion brand, just because it was just me and, you know, the little factory that I was working out of with these four seamstresses.
Right.
Yeah.
So your background is, well, I mean, obviously your background is design, but you also did a lot of retail.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
does that help you in your brand strategy?
That's an interesting question because I feel like we, so I'm born in 1980. So we are this very small, I think they call us Xennials. We are like 1978 to 1982. Those kids were like the last generation that grew with technology. Like we had a computer lab at school, but most people didn't have computers at home. And so, like, that sort of evolution of things, I think, is worth mentioning because by the time I graduated school, like, let's go back, once I went to college and started getting into my fashion program, they were teaching us a way of like, this is what you do as a brand for entrepreneurship. You have to go to market. Market is where all the buyers go to purchase your clothes, right? And then sometimes you have to go 2 or 3 times before a buyer will decide to buy you for their boutique because they want to make sure you're going to stick around. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is the way things go. Also, let's not forget the internet happened in the 90s and people started to shop online. I remember being in my dorm room laughing because I was like, how can you buy a tennis shoe online? How do you know what's going to fit? You know what I mean? And so by the time I graduated school, things have people how they had been shopping all changed. So people didn't need to go into a department store anymore. They were ordering, online and then shipping back if it didn't work, or they'd order two in two different sizes and send back. So it's like retail really, I feel like, helped me understand the behavior of people because we were busy at Express, but like the company would send reports about like how much online is changing the game for them. And then I started to see that like, you know, the advancement of phones, people were ordering things from their phones. And then the retailers started to have their own apps that you can just go to and order from. So this is all within a span of like 10 years. You know what I mean? So like it's a completely different place now. So
Mhm.
like, yes, it helps me understand the person. I think it has helped me realize like, you know, how I would like to move forward. But I think, so much is changing. I think there's for the better. And I also think there's not just one way. That way that they taught us was like the way of, prior to technology's advancements. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like
Yeah.
now, like, especially with social media, it's like you can really build a customer base that loves your work and sell directly to them through Instagram.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like from your Instagram store. Like it's really fascinating because that's what I want for myself is like I want like 100 dudes that love my clothes that I can just be like, here's what I have for you. Until 3 months later, I'll show you a whole new thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you can give me feedback on what you'd like to have for yourself and what you know what I mean?
Right.
I want that like I want to cultivate a group that like I'm doing it for. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what I want.
Right. I like that. The Paulie
Yeah.
Gibson man.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
a little gang, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, yeah, I think it'd be so cool to have like fashion shows where they get to come and they get to sit front row. These are like, that's the VIP or the customer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they're the most important things. I want them to have like, maybe there's only 60 shirts that are made and they're numbered and they get they get to pick their thing. Like those
Right.
special
Yeah.
things that make them feel like you know they're a part of a brand, they're a part of the brand, not wearing a brand.
Yeah. Kind of like, would you say they would be influencers?
Sure.
That word's used a lot, so I just,
Yeah.
yeah.
I feel, like, I don't even know what I would say. Like, it's almost like a souped up focus group. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that are sort of like giving the feedback and that are really in the brand, living their lives every day. Like, I would love that sort of like connection to, because I do love people. And I think I do love knowing that someone feels good about themselves, and not that it's all about their outward appearance, but when their appearance on the outside can affect how they show up in the world. I think that's the best feeling, knowing that I had something to do with that. Right. So that's why I would like to build it in this way. And I don't think I thought this same way a couple of years ago, but truly it's been after I started personal shopping for people and taking guys out to the store and teaching them, how to dress their body where it is right now, and teaching them about colors, blowing their minds to that black and brown can go together, like watching them like, oh, I thought there was these rules. And I was like, no, you just got to do it with the intention. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, knowing that I've gotten some really sincere, like, thank you so much for taking the time to teach me. I feel like now after my divorce, I can go out and date, like, and I feel proud of how I look. That's everything.
Yeah.
Like, everything. Because I knew growing up, like, I'm sorry, I'm going way off on a tangent, but like,
no, this is good.
Little girls in our society, little girls at a very young age understand what pretty means. We tell them that you're so pretty today. There's a reinforcement of understanding her outward appearance all throughout, ever since she's a tiny little girl, We don't tell boys you're so handsome, right? They don't have an understanding. They just wait until a little girl tells them that they're cute. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I don't believe there's not an innate understanding of how you present yourself can affect your outcomes, right? And I think that that's really important to mention, because I think that, like, many men get into even my age and they're like, oh, I didn't know, I didn't know my pants were too long. I didn't know my jacket was too big. I didn't know that, Yeah. And so I feel like that's why it's so important, I feel, to focus on men and menswear, is because I think there's a real opportunity to shift how people feel about themselves, men specifically.
So do you think that is the reason why most fashion weeks and have more women's wear, and why most retailers are fade out of men's clothes, because men don't know what to do? Because, like you said, women or little girls are told, like, you're pretty, and they realize what they're wearing makes them what's pretty. Is that what you think?
I think that there's an understanding of putting one's best foot forward at a very early age. Make sure your hair is brushed. Make sure your skin is taken care of. Jewelry matters. Makeup matters. All of those things, I think they grow up learning piece by piece. Mm-hmm. I think men are taught, cut your hair, wash yourself, but we're not taught, like, let's put an outfit together for who you want to be today. That's not taught to us. Mm-hmm. Women innately understand that because of how they were stepped into all of that as they grew up, I believe. Right. That's a theory I have. I understood early on, like, the ritualistic nature of watching my mom get ready for events. It was like a whole situation. She was like, okay, we're going to bathe, we're going to mask, we're going to do the thing. And then it's like, then she starts painting her fingernails. She starts, like, doing all the things. The rollers come out. the steaming of the dress, like all of that stuff. She would leave the house what I would consider to be a completely different person than my mother, you know?
Yeah.
She would feel and look like so beautiful. And I was like, what? I remember thinking as a little kid, like, I wonder what kind of fun she's having today. You know, she would drop me off at my grandmother's house and then she would go to an event or whatever. And it's like, I would just be like, if I looked that good, like, I wonder what she's doing. And that's such a weird thing for a little boy to think, but it was just fascinating, like watching the care that she took to get all of that together to present herself to wherever she was going. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I want that. I want that whole thing.
Yeah,
I knew that at like 7 or 8. Like, I was like, yeah, like wherever she's fucking going, like I want to do that when I grow up, you know?
Yeah.
And so I've really tried to to build a closet that like makes me feel like I have all the options in the world, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's like, if I want to be a cowboy tomorrow, like I've got 17 denim snap front shirts, I've got 16 pairs of cowboy boots. Like, what color? Where we go? Like, some with stones. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like that's really truly like what I love about it is how it makes people feel. Fashion is so. Oh, I love the expression. You know what I mean? Like, I love how I can show you in 2 or 3 different outfits, like who I really am. I think that's so fun. You know? Yeah.
I think I have a couple of your snap button down, short sleeve, red and a black one. I think I have.
Sounds right.
Yeah.
You also have a pair of my graffitied denim, stretch denim from like 2000. I put it on the guy at Threads for Hope, and you were like, "Can you make me these?" And I was like, "Yeah." God, and I made them at my kitchen table.
I wore those all the time.
Yeah, you did.
It was like stretch denim. I'm like, what's that?
Yeah. It was so great.
I didn't know because I'm from the event side, so I didn't know things. You know, I learned a lot of things from like you and Michael Drummond and just meeting all of these designers. But yeah, stretch denim. I'm like, this is great.
Oh, it's the best convention ever.
I have big soccer legs, so like that works so well for me.
Yeah, I was like, wow, this is ingenuity.
So let's talk about Gent because that's kind of where we the stuff you're talking about with men's fashion and getting men to understand what makes them look good and having a focus on it is what Gent is about. You know, when we started it. Do you remember when we started it? How it started? I do.
I have a memory, but I want to hear yours first.
Okay.
So
I was approached by a radio station. I can't remember the name of the station to do a fashion event at the Lexus dealership. And you and I had talked about you focusing on men and menswear, and you were really, really getting into. I think you were maybe 2 collections in. What was the name of the collection you did? Blue? I think it was Blueprint. So I think it was right after Blueprint. And we were thinking, man, there's not a lot of menswear in fashion weeks, you know, and obviously we were a part of the whole, 5 or 6 years of St. Louis Fashion Week and realizing that this is happening. And you've obviously traveled and done other fashion weeks and thought the same. And so I called you on the phone about this idea of doing just a fashion show at this Lexus dealership for men. And I was in the car with you and this is how we always do things, you and I was in the car just driving around in circles for an hour. And we came up with the whole concept. And you came up with the name.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that or not, but you came up with the name, Gent. And we came up with this whole idea. Just like driving. I literally was driving home and I never made it to my house. I just kept driving because I didn't want to get out of the car. We were having a good conversation and it was just flowing. And it just like this idea, which is so great. and I was super excited to get started. And that's what I remember. I don't know if you remember that, but that's kind of how it started. And then it just kind of went from there.
Yeah. So I do remember that conversation, but I remember, so Greg Garland was fascinated by my business at the time. And he was saying to me that he was like, I feel like for you need, and he was saying this even back then, I feel like you need to get to your customer and you need to focus on like one or two items. And I was like, okay. And he's like, what if I threw you a party? And I said, okay. He's like, I'll invite 40 of my guy friends and business associates or something. We'll have some scotch and bourbon. We'll have some girls walk around cocktailing it. And then you can take measurements and orders for your shirts and stuff. And I was like, cool. And then I was like, that sounds great. Right. So I was like, cool. Greg's really well known in this community. He went, weirdly, I don't know if you knew this, he went to high school with my brothers, which is super weird.
No,
yeah, so he like knows my mom and everything. So I feel like once he realized the connection we had, he became like just another brother to me, which was really great because he knew so much about business. And he kind of became my mentor. And then I know you two knew each other. And so I remember him telling me, he's like, oh, I talked to Dwight today. And I was like, oh yeah? He's like, yeah. And I told him about our idea. And I was like, oh, are you inviting him? And he was like, no, he said he's doing a thing very similar. He's putting a bunch of guys in a room and they're going to do like bourbon and stuff. And I was like, what? And so I feel like that was the conversation before we had our conversation. And that's why it took so long. It's because we melded those two ideas together and you ended up having, you remember? Because like
now I do, because I think it was, so I think that dealership thing was supposed to be some bourbon and men's something. And we turned it, we completely twisted it into, man. Yeah. God, you have a better memory than I do.
And I only remember it because I was like, wow. Because at the time it was like, we were all feeling a little bit of like, not like a hangover, but we were all feeling like, God, I wish St. Louis Fashion Week was back. I wish they were doing that again. And so I feel like this notion of like getting this event together for specifically for menswear could have legs. And I remember that conversation like is what started. I was pumped and you were pumped. And then Greg was pumped because like he didn't know that it had turned into that. And so he was like, oh God, like, and I remember like, it really did. That first one was a doozy. Like I was shocked by how many people came.
I was too. That was our first sellout. We sold out. And, I had finally had a lot of shows under my belt. So I knew what I was doing.
Right. Yeah.
At that point. Because I was still doing pins and needles and product design stuff after Fashion Week had ended.
Yes.
And I think I was doing them at the same time, but yeah, and that was 2015 was our first show. So we're running on our 10th anniversary is the next one.
Oh man.
I know.
That's crazy.
We gotta.
How cool. Oh God, we're going to do something amazing.
Yes, I know. So what do you think? How do you think it, let's fast forward past the first one to last year, or not last year, it was this year. I keep thinking it was last year. By February, it was so close to the end of the year. Let's talk about fashion weeks in general. Like, what do you think the state of New York Fashion Week is going on right now, or starts tomorrow? Do you think they're beneficial? Do you think there's something missing? What do you think about them? Our Fashion Week obviously kind of faded out. I think it was just manpower was one, not enough staffing to really run a good Fashion Week. We had a good Fashion Week, but it was a lot. A lot for a magazine to run. Well, most Fashion Weeks are run by, it's Chicago Fashion Week, and that's their company, and it's
Yes.
LA Fashion Week, and it's them. You know, we were run by a magazine that's trying to run a magazine and do a fashion week, and it was just a lot for them. I mean, I love that it happened, and it was a great experience, and we did a great job. It's just a lot to do to try and cover everything that we needed to, and to focus on what needed to be focused on. So, what do you think is missing, or is anything missing, or do you think fashion weeks are great the way they are?
This is such a multifaceted question. So, let's take New York, for example. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they really do have a system where New York, it's promoted, it's hyped, it's sold out,
Mm-hmm.
and then the following week is market week, where these people who saw things on the runway get to go make appointments to go see the clothes up close, and they write orders based on that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that is a very, cyclical thing that goes on like every season. I do think they're important. I think when you look at, New York and you see that, like, Marc Jacobs, Tom Ford, you know, you see how they transform you into their universe. Like, that's how you're able to, that's how you fall in love with it, is being immersed in their world. You know what I mean? And,
Mm-hmm.
it's so multidimensional. So it's not just a visualization, right? Like, you get to hear it, you get to smell it, you get to be surrounded by this vision that people have for these clothes and for who they feel like you should be when you're in these clothes. I think that's so important. And, it doesn't always have to be a traditional runway style show, but it could, any sort of like presentation, I'll call it. I think that's really important to an artist. It's important to a creative, because it's that immersion, right?
Mm-hmm.
I do think regional fashion weeks are important to a certain degree, because these artists need exposure, and they need customers, and they need to, on whatever scale, they need to express themselves and have a platform to do so. Where I have a little bit of trouble is the expense is so high if you are not a big brand. So if you are new or starting out, or really just trying to, like, step out and get seen and noticed and stuff, it's like sometimes regional fashion weeks charge you to show. And so it's not only building your, $10,000 collection, let's say, but then it's also like, fees to participate. Sometimes, we're paying models, we're paying, to have booths to try to sell things. So, like, a lot of those fees, where I understand, I understand the fees, but, like, I think that's where it's kind of hard. Also, I think that oftentimes people, and this is truly something that I'll have to say is different about, and why I think we've worked together so long, is because sometimes people throw events for the sake of an event. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Like, I feel like I've been to a lot of fashion shows that were little on, or light on fashion, and heavy on cameras and red carpets and step repeats and free cocktails and things like that. And I think that, sometimes we miss the idea of, like, okay, we're here for the fashion. Like, I don't, if we're going to have a show full of, like, polos and khakis, like, that's tough. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want to pay $100 a ticket to see that. I want to see someone's creativity. I want to see their, their vision and their, all of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the
And
drama.
yeah, the drama,
Yeah.
right? But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like sometimes the shows that have been around are strictly for the people who like to go to things.
Mm-hmm.
And while there's a place for that, I do feel like we have to remember that these people are spending their own money and their own time creating these creations. And I think that, we want to make sure that those people in those seats are there for that reason, and that are, hopefully there to, connect with the designer, make a purchase,
Yeah.
you know, offer some advice. I don't know, like something that benefits the designer, I think is really important. I remember having conversations with Laura and with Michael Drummond, with AJ, and we're like, we have to stop showing because the cost is just so high and for such a small return that it's like I can't continue to fly around to regional fashion weeks paying X number of dollars to do this whenever like the clothes themselves, the most important part about what we're doing, like isn't moving. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So
Yeah.
I did for a long time set up some rules about like if I was asked, great, I will do that, but it can't cost me. You know what I mean? Like I will go if it is, even just to support the cause. I've done tons of charity fashion shows, which I love for like, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, for Lift for Life, for, tons of things that I really, I'll do anything for kids, to be quite honest. But, you know, traveling, I can't do it unless there is, compensation and stuff because it's
Yeah.
so expensive to make these clothes. So double-edged question, like, or a long way around to answer your question. It's just kind of like, I do think they have potential to help. And I think they are important for a designer who's able to feel like they get something out of it, because it's hard to lug all of that. And I mean, you've seen me, like, it's me. And I'm getting the rolling racks out of the car. I'm making 2 or 3 trips. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm saving everything. I'm fitting everything. I'm doing all the things. And it's like, sometimes it's like, wow, that's a lot. And we want to make sure. I feel like our events have always been like, you even asked the question, well, what are the designers going to get out of it? Like, even just asking that question is so important,
Yeah.
because that's what we're doing this for. You know what I mean? And I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of times I've been involved in things where, like, they didn't think about racks. They didn't think about steam. They didn't think about help. They didn't think about bathrooms. Like,
Right.
and it's like, okay, guys, but, there's
Yeah.
100 models back here. You didn't think about the bathroom situation? Like, what do you mean? You
Right.
didn't think about food? You didn't think about lunch? Bottled water?
Yeah.
Like, those things I
Right.
feel like sometimes get missed. So,
Yeah, that's important to find out what you guys need.
mhm.
I mean, like you said, you can't be like Stewart, for example, same thing. He flew with, I mean, very little clothes for himself to wear.
Right, right.
Everything he packed was the clothes he put in the show.
Hmm. I believe
Crazy.
it.
Yeah. And he came from London. And so he
Yeah.
made sure he was taken care of, like, covered everything, his expenses and everything, as much as I could. But yeah, I mean, everyone, when he's built a brand and now he's kind of starting over, and
Yeah.
he's back where he's grinding, and he's trying to hustle, just like all of us are. So, um, yeah, you gotta take care of the designer at these shows. That's huge.
Yeah. And I think, if I'm being real, like, COVID changed everything for everyone. I don't care who you are. Like, it changed a lot of things. And for me personally, it put a lot of things into perspective. Like to your point about Stewart starting over, I feel like in many ways, like everything I was doing stopped. And, I really focused in on my full-time job. And I was thankful that that job was in food, because that was considered essential during that time. So it kept me
Mhm.
working every day. I think I only didn't work for the 2 days we were shut down, trying to figure out how to be to go only.
Mhm.
And my company was great to me, and they still are. But I think, like, as I think about how I'm going to, what my brand's future looks like, yeah, I'm starting it all over, and I'm really going to hone in on, who my customer is and what he needs, and tighten down on, like, really, I'm going to be really mindful about the expense and about what's special about these pieces so that they feel like excited to buy something from Paulie. You know what I mean? That it's like something really great that they can't find anywhere else that is really special. So I think that's where I'm headed, is to, a more curated, because I mean, I was doing like, oh, I want to have 35 looks. I want to tell this extravagant story, and I want to have like every guy's got on 6 pieces of clothing. Like I was doing like, I think Blueprint was 42 looks for the show in LA, and it had 244 pieces of clothing.
You were over styling, or just?
I think I just had a lot to say.
Yeah.
I think like I look at those looks now and I still love them, but I do feel like it was a fully realized moment. I knew exactly what I wanted to say. It all made sense. It was all cohesive. It was all wearable, but it was like funky. Like it wasn't stuff you're going to see everywhere, mixed with button-down striped shirts and, denim and, straight leg black pants. You know what I mean? Like they were all, but it was all mixed up. And I felt like that was great. But it was also like $9,000 to do. And it was like, oh, okay, like if I don't sell these clothes, so I feel like, that's where I'm redirecting the energy. So it's going to be, okay, fewer things, more special things, fewer articles of clothing, because, I want my clothes to be loved and worn and, and made in the USA.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a lot of creatives get excited about what they do and don't think about the, it's a job, it's a career, it's a job. You got to pay your bills, and you make all these really cool things that that you don't have a return on.
Yeah.
So it's finding that medium, that happy medium of how to keep how to be creative and express yourself, but also make money doing it.
And I think, if I'm being honest too, I think I got tripped up in that. Like I was making all these things, but then I was noticing that like where I live geographically, fewer people were resonating with what I was making. Right. And so like, it kind of always felt like, am I in the wrong place? Like, should I move or something? Or, how do I reach people? Then I noticed myself starting to not water down, but focus on more relatable things that I thought the Midwestern man was wanting. So if I know the period I'm talking about, where everything sort of shifted into like solid colors and like streamlined silhouettes and things that were really sort of almost traditional in nature or rooted in a traditional item. Like I remember specifically this like cobalt blue trench coat. And I was like, I remember looking at it being like, okay, like you guys are going to like this, right? Like, and they did, but then I wasn't in there anywhere really. And so I was like, oh, so for like, I think 2017, 16, 17, 18, do you remember like Gent? I did this ivory collection. I was like ivory and tan, and I liked it. It just wasn't exciting to me, And I feel like that's what I was doing, was trying to reach the person rather than attracting the correct person to myself, And so, yeah, I got kind of caught up in like, well, I got to make money. I gotta sell some stuff, and I feel like I lost myself a little bit. So I'm actually sort of thankful for the time away during, 2020 and beyond, because like I really did start to focus on or refocus on, and, we're myself, because like we're changing all the time, we're evolving all the time. And I was like, I had to really think about like, if I was going to do this, who's my guy and what do I have to say to him? And I think, the time away paired with the time I really got into personal shopping and getting into people's closets and helping them clean out and writing lists for them with images of like, okay, this is, you look this way now, but you want to look like Ryan Reynolds. This is what he's wearing. You know what I mean? So we need to get you these items so that you can feel that put together or whatever. What each person's different, but like really creating that map for them. I was like, oh God, this is the dream, is like helping people feel good. And so that's what I want my brand to do with pieces like that.
So what do you, any advice you would give any menswear designer focused student or, new company, someone that wants to focus on menswear? What advice would you give them on, I mean, you've given us a lot of really cool stuff, and really thank you so much for being so honest and bold about what, I mean, that's what we want. I mean, it's great to hear the success stories, but we also want to hear how hard it is.
It's so hard.
So what advice would you give that next menswear designer brand, college student, new to fashion, that person?
I think I would say to be firm and unapologetic about who they are and what they have to say. I think that it's important to be true to who you are, because that's what makes your fashion different. Menswear is much slower to move than women's wear is. So you tend to see trends stick around much longer than you do in women's wear. We're getting better, I think. Here in 2024, I'm seeing a lot of things move a lot quicker with these larger fashion houses, Alexander Wang, Gucci, D Squared for sure. Like, I'm seeing them so far as to like dip backwards into some of their archives and pull out things. So I would just say to, just follow their gut for what they think is next for themselves, and don't compare yourself to anyone else. I think I did a lot of that growing up, was like, I want to be Ralph Lauren. What I really was saying was like, I want to have a business like Ralph Lauren.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not like, and really, I would urge them to build out whatever their demographic is. Really, like, where do they eat? Where do they go on vacation? Who are their friends? What's their family like? Where do they live? Like, really get clear on who their customer is early, so that they're able to really design for them. And if it is themselves, like, still do the same thing,
Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's great. No, that's important. I like that. You got to find out. You got to know your customers.
Yeah.
That's the most important thing. All right, I got 2 questions for you that are non-fashion related.
Oh God.
You
Okay.
ready?
Sure.
You're easy. I mean, I hope you're easy. Well, what is Paul Gibson's favorite color?
Oh, teal. My life is teal.
Teal.
You knew that.
I knew that. Yeah.
My
They
car's.
didn't know, but they didn't know.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I pretty much wear it at least 3 times a week. Yeah.
If you were to go on vacation, your dream vacation, where's that?
I think I would love to tour Italy. I would love to, specifically in a fashionable way. Like, I would love to see like Gucci's first store. I would love to see, Renzo Rosso's like Diesel Style Lab. Like, I would love to see, oh God, I would love to see like, I'd love to see a shoe being made in Italy. You know what I mean? Like, I would love to see like, oh God, Prada. I'd love to see all of it, like, just in its home country. Like, I would just love to see, like, because I remember I studied abroad in Paris, and I remember the women, like, 7:00 in the morning pushing strollers down the street, and they're in dresses and heels. And I'm like, what kind of what's your life like? You know what I mean? Like, I'm
Right.
like, what's happening? Like cobblestone streets and they're in like 5-inch stilettos. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, you know, and meanwhile, that time period was like the dawn of athleisure. So I started seeing, you know, back at home, it was like leggings and puffy vests were everywhere during the day. And so it was like, wow, okay, this is such a different dichotomy. So I feel like I would love to travel Italy specifically to see all of that. And, you know, all of the other, like, you know, amazing architecture and food and all of that. But anywhere I'm going, I'm shopping hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Italy's my choice too. Actually, I would love to go to Italy.
I mean, I'll definitely go.
Yeah,
I would go anywhere and be thrilled. But like that's like bucket list type stuff.
Yeah. Well, cool, Paul. Thank you again for joining us today, and we look forward to your next collection for Gent.
Yeah, I'm stoked. I don't know when we'll be yet.
That's great. I know.
Yeah.
You say that all the time, and
I need to run some things by.
You come up with stuff with like that, and it just blows people's minds. So it's great.
Oh, well, thank you very much. This has been super fun. There are so many things that have happened in this conversation that I completely forgot about.
Yeah, me too.
I've really known you for a long time.
Yeah.
We've been doing things for like 15 years.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
We're old.
Yeah, I know. Well, older, not old. Older.
Sure.
I used to say older. I don't say old.
Yeah. No, it's funny. Wow.
Well, thanks everyone for watching and listening. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, and do all the things, and we will see you again next time.
Cool.
Say bye, Paul.
Bye, Paul. Bye.